Hello and welcome to the Game Dev Garden, a podcast all about deep conversations, game development curiosities, mental health, and wherever the dialogue might take us. Thank you so much for joining me here today, and I'd like to welcome today's guest. Natalie Winter is a voiceover artist, director, actor with a fantastic, unbelievable range of projects, including Assassin's Creed Valhalla and a professional D&D stream. Welcome to the show, Natalie. It's so lovely to have you.
Thank you very much, Oliver. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Hope you enjoy the warm welcome. We always try and roll out the red carpet for our guests and all that lovely stuff.
I feel so flattered. I feel spoiled. I feel well taken care of.
Perfect. That's just what we aspire to do on the Game Dev Garden. So, have you been playing any exciting games or any exciting projects on the horizon that you'd like to share with the show?
Ooh, I've been playing lots of bits of games
Mm-hmm.
recently. Actually, Hades. I'm a bit behind the curve with Hades, but I've been playing quite a bit of that. What else did I play? I've been trying to get through. Okay, so you mentioned I was in Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
I
I spent
did.
a good couple of months playing that. Not only playing the game, because I love the game, I love the Assassin's Creed games, so it was amazing to be involved in that, but,
Okay.
then there's the added kind of the business side of it where I was like, "Right, now I've gotta go hunt myself down to get clips for, like,
Yeah.
show m reel material." So I spent a lot of time playing that, and then just desperately wanted to kind of churn through a bunch of indie games I had on my to play list. So I've been doing that. What have I played? I've played, um, Guard Duty, it's been out for ages.
Mhm.
That was cute, that was fun. Um, Close to the Sun was really good.
Oh
That's like,
wow. Loads of cool stuff.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, and I was super late to the party on Hades as well, and I was just blown away by it.
Mm,
Um, I just the I'm a big roguelike fan, and I have loved that genre for a long time.
yep,
And seeing it done with such a narrative focus and like fully voice acted,
yeah.
amazing stuff. But the Assassin's Creed Valhalla stuff is just like so unbelievably exciting. They've got the new
Oh,
expansion on the way at the
yeah.
moment, um,
I've
and
not had a chance to I mean, it's only literally only just come out, so I've not had
mhm.
a chance to have a poke at that yet, but, I'm not in the expansion, that I know of. I mean, I didn't record anything for it, so,
Oh, that's fine. No, no, it's a big game as well. So
but yeah,
I
it's
imagine
huge.
getting those clips was probably a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah, so the characters I played, I didn't play any, like, named characters that were part of the story
Mhm.
specifically. I played basically all of the villagers. Um, I
Right.
don't know about on the men's side, but on the women's
Yeah.
side, I know there were 4 voice actors who were hired to do the the
Yeah.
female villagers who were speaking in Old Anglo-Saxon, so I was one of
Mhm.
4. So it kind of involved a lot of walking up to random villagers, waiting for them to say something, and kind of listening in and being like, "It's not speaking in my natural voice, not speaking English. Was
Yeah.
that me? I'm pretty sure that was me. Wait, that person that was running away screaming from the fire, was that my scream? I think so."
Oh my word, that must be such a crazy experience to be involved with that project, but also
Yeah.
to have to like sift through a massive game to find that stuff is super curious, and it's not something that the voiceover side of the games industry and all of that the voice artistry and that sort of thing is not actually that particularly well understood by a lot of members of the dev team.
Mm.
So it's super cool and super interesting to hear about that stuff. um,
So
but yeah.
I agree with you. I mean, I love my job. It
Yeah.
is amazing. It is super cool. It is super fun. I think, there's a tendency because we're not involved from the super early stages,
Yeah.
because you don't get taught about voice actors on courses, or there's no courses for game dev that I am aware of. There may be some that teach about voice acting. I
Mhm.
think we do get this kind of, it's very glamorous and mysterious and
Mm.
cool, and that's kind of part of my, I it's not a mission, but like in getting involved with things like BAFTA Crew, which is
Yeah,
where we met,
exactly.
and going to game dev conventions, making friends with people in the game dev community. Apart from making loads of cool new friends and meeting people,
Yeah.
I want to be like, hey, look, we are normal. We may speak in funny voices sometimes, but we are normal people too.
Oh my god,
You
yeah.
know, like
I get it.
we
No.
just want to chill and hang and talk games and nerd out with everyone. And I think there can be this aura of, oh my god, the voice actors, they're
Mhm.
so good, it's so amazing, but like the stuff that everyone else does to make a game is amazing as well, so
Yeah.
don't glamorize us to that extent.
Totally get it, and that's such a amazing, unique perspective as well, because it's just an aspect of the game development
Yeah.
cycle and pipeline and roles that is like you said, it is glamorized. It's a bit mysterious. It's not fully understood by a lot of dev teams. I'm speaking from my own experience there. Really, as a level designer, I only have the vaguest connection with the voiceover team and stuff like that.
But it's all
Um,
part of the story,
it is, yeah,
right?
totally. And you're absolutely right. There is when I studied, I knew even less than I know now about the role of voiceover in games, and I think there might be there's an games audio course, a master's course in Leeds. I probably shouldn't
Mm.
speak too much about it because I don't know it extensively. Um, but I imagine they have like some kind of voice acting component to their course. Their course is I hear amazing things about that course.
Yeah.
But yeah, but that's such great stuff already. But I'd like to kick it off with our first game development curiosity, which would be
Mm.
something that I just can't help but ask this question. And this is a question that I get a great deal as a designer.
Mm.
Um, uh, so in the world of up and coming professionals, how do you get started in the world of voiceover? What is the route in, and how does that work?
Cool. So I would say there's a couple of different routes into voiceover. Um and then there's different routes into voiceover for games specifically, and they're,
Yeah,
they are the same beast but also niches. So I personally, I went to I was super into acting and performance at school. I went to university to study drama, which was more of the theoretical side of it, the critical side of it, writing a lot
yeah,
of essays and devising theatre as well as putting on plays. And then I went to drama school afterwards to study the art of acting. And then I found myself being drawn to voiceover from there. It was not something that I'd actually really thought about or considered. It wasn't something I was very aware of
mm,
until voiceover classes at drama school, where I was like, oh, people are telling me I'm good at this and I'm really enjoying it. I
mhm,
should do that. And then obviously put together in my head, I uh, I play video games all the time. They have some incredible performances in them. Well, obviously, I should, you know, push towards performing in games as well. That's something that I'm really interested in.
yeah,
Um, so I guess that's quite a traditional acting-based background. I know people who have got into voiceover from doing all sorts of jobs. So people in broadcasting as well. There's a lot of journalists or even producers in TV and radio that go on to do voiceover. And there's people that come in from a very commercial or corporate background, where the majority of the voiceover work that they do will be commercials that you see on
yeah,
TV or the radio, or they'll do training videos for various different corporations or audiobooks as well. Um, so there's all these different kind of faces on the sphere of
mhm,
voice acting, and people can come in from any different angle really. For video games, obviously, particularly in the indie games community, there's a lot of people being like, right, okay, well, I don't have the budget for voice actors, or I don't know where to find voice actors,
yeah,
or I don't know anything about it, so I'm just going to do it, or I'm just going to get my mate to do it. And obviously, sometimes that fantastic, that works. That's worked out for them. They've struck gold, but sometimes obviously it can detract from the game if the
Mm,
person isn't quite as experienced or tuned in.
mm,
Um, yeah, so there's definitely loads of different routes in. I would always recommend getting you don't have to go to drama school, but
mm,
take an acting class, take a voice class, just to get in tune with yourself, because I think there's a bit of a misconception, and I say that, but, obviously, a lot of the time people say, "Oh, yes, I know there's this misconception that anyone can do voice acting because everyone's got a voice." But genuinely, think about it. If you are interested in voice acting, then you
mhm.
need to take it seriously as a
Yeah.
business. Take your instrument seriously. Like if you're wanting to be an artist in games, you wouldn't just rock up and say, "Oh, I know how to hold a pencil. Hire
Mhm,
me." Right? You would
mhm,
practice and you would develop your technique. You would maybe focus in on, okay, well, I really like drawing landscapes, or I really like um creating forms, or I really want to work in 3D art, and you'd buy the tools, you would invest your time and experience in learning to master those. And it's exactly the same for voice. Even though you have a voice, you use it every day, there's a
yeah,
difference between just talking to someone else and reading someone else's words as
mhm.
if you are talking very naturally to someone else and have only just thought of those words. Like, that is an acquired skill.
Oh, absolutely. Wow, there's so much amazing stuff there to break down, and I couldn't agree more that the skills required need to be nurtured and brought on. Even if it is something that you can do already,
Mm,
it doesn't mean you can do it professionally. And the multiple routes thing into voiceover. We see that in you know um, the core dev roles as well.
mm,
These people come from all over the place. I know I know someone who but got their first role in QA by literally like walking in the front door and saying, "Hey, have you got any QA positions?"
yeah.
That one's a bit dated now, but it's still a true story. I love that, and thank you for sharing some of your stuff about your personal journey there as well. It's always
That's
great
okay.
to hear that stuff. Um, what unexpected challenges are there within the role of a voice actor?
Um, I think
I
sorry,
know.
massive
All right, no
silence.
trouble at
Great
all.
for
It's like
podcasts.
it's
Um,
all good. It's one of those questions that it can take on so many different meanings and like different connotations to it and all that sort of things. And when it comes to um, stuff within game and level design as well, um, there's so much you could cover there. But like
mhm,
usually the sort of things I turn to are when the job becomes very granular and you have to sort of do a whole bunch of small tasks instead of like
mhm.
big chunky tasks like that.
Yeah.
I don't suppose there's anything similar in the
Oh,
world of
yeah, yeah, yeah.
voiceover.
So I was just the reason for the pause is I was trying to filter through, because I'd actually answered, I think, a lot of the one side of it
Mm,
in my previous talking about, like, well, okay, there's a lot of people that think they've got a voice so they can do voice acting. So the
yes.
unexpected challenge is uh, actually learning the intricacies of working with your instrument, and what it can do, what it can't do, and
Yes. Right.
that. But then the other side of it, I think the unexpected challenge is remembering that you are a business, and you're a sole business, so you are also responsible for hustling for work.
Mm,
Even if you've got an agent, you are responsible for finding yourself work, otherwise you won't work very often.
mm,
Um, you're responsible for your finances, you're responsible for your branding. Like, there's these are things that you don't necessarily have to think of in everyday life, but yeah, like, how are you presenting yourself? What areas of voiceover are you wanting to focus on? If you're wanting to focus on games, then knowing your particular niches that you fit into and your skill set, what accents and voices you can do, does that filter into your branding, how you
Mhm.
are presenting yourself, how you are approaching different companies. Um, what time are you dedicating to that hustle side of it, and the upkeep, the admin of doing your finances, staying on track for your tax, knowing what the trends are in not only rates but in styles of performance as well. So there's all these little nuances that kind of fall under the umbrella of know your job, but no one
Yeah.
really tells you what the job is. It's all stuff that you gotta fix. Like, even in drama school,
Mhm.
we were taught to act, and we had maybe a week's worth of classes on the business of acting in over 2 years. I was on a
Yeah.
2-year course.
Yeah. Yeah, there's such a similar story in the world of the game design courses as well, because
Mm,
they teach you very very traditional routes in games. They teach you kind of things about vertical slices and how do you apply yourself in a studio context, but they don't sort of cover things like, hey, you know, um, how does paying taxes work if
yeah.
you have a full-time job and do side work? How do you go about that? Never even mentioned, and it's part of your many people's careers as game developers. And the thing you mentioned about it not just about being the craft and the art itself is in the voiceover work. Um, Game and level design is not just about the stuff you produce either. It's
Mm,
about participation in meetings. How do you structure your day and your relationship in the team?
yep.
All of that stuff plays a big part in your success in the field. And like you were saying, it's not just about the craft and the art at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think there's something you were saying there is really good to consider as well, as the relationships you have with other people when the majority of your job is sitting alone in a small padded cell and
Yeah.
talking to yourself.
Mhm.
So then being able to get on with other people
Yeah.
is also good. And then so I'm lucky. I have a voice agent, damn good voices. They are damn good. They look after me very well. Simon, who runs it, knows the business really, really well, and is not afraid of being hardline to protect the talents that he represents.
Yeah.
And I think for people who don't have an agent, that can sometimes be tricky. Is Particularly when you're negotiating for rates,
Mm.
is there can be this pressure of, well, everyone wants to be a voice actor. I can find someone down the street who will do it for 50 quid. So why do I pay you 200?
Mhm.
Um, and when you're on your own, that is a huge challenge to kind of overcome the fear and be like, no, this is what I am worth.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh my god. Yeah.
so it's good. So yeah, it's been really beneficial for me to have that relationship with my agent where
Yeah.
I know that they will fight for me and they can play the bad guy. They can
Yeah.
be the strict one, and then I can waltz in and be all sunshine and rainbows. Hello, it's
Mhm.
really lovely to meet you, blah, 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 after the nitty gritty stuff has been done. But there's still situations where I have to negotiate myself. So it's developing those people skills of being both sunshine and rainbows, but
Mhm.
also, no, this is what I'm worth though.
Oh my god, that is so eye opening and so amazing to hear about. It's something that I think I'm sure the audience is going to be just as floored by that stuff as I am, because and there's a really interesting parallel by what you're describing there.
Mm,
So when I started in games, I was very 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 unsure what I was going to get paid for my work.
mm,
Because I was a graduate and I was hungry for the industry and I'd worked hard. I'd invested all this time in becoming a game and level designer. And how do you know what you're worth? If they'd
yeah.
have said to me, we'll pay you. If my first job had said we're going to pay you 16K, I would have said sure, yeah, fine,
Mm,
no problem. You know, but only as you go through your first couple of years on the job and in the industry, and this progresses as your career progresses as well. You start to be more in tune to what you're worth and what you bring to the table with your experience. And
mhm.
it's so so difficult knowing where that line is when you're first starting. And any students that are listening, do think about that very carefully and try and get some advice from your lecturers and from any contacts you have in the industry, because that is a very important stage and a very important thing to consider as well.
Yeah, and I imagine the games industry has a similar vibe as the acting industry,
Yeah,
whereby, like I just said, there's someone around the corner who is
100%.
gagging for it and will do
Yeah,
it for whatever. There's so many I see, casting call outs on Twitter for voice actors where you just get people being like, "I've got a microphone, I'll do it for free."
yeah, yeah,
Just because they want to do it and be part of
yeah.
it
I
rather than
know.
respecting the craft of it, and I imagine you get a maybe not for free, but you do get a lot of people kind of, because it's a popular industry, there's lots of
Yeah,
people who wanna
there are, yeah.
work in games who don't appreciate exactly the value
Mhm.
of it. So and I wish that they taught that more in schools,
No, no, it's
finances and budgeting.
exactly right. It's so, so, so important. Um, and people are so, so hungry and thirsty for the work when they're starting out, because you know because people are passionate about this work. People
Yeah,
love it. We love what we do, and I know it's the same for you. Um, and that leads to, when you're first starting out, you can be quite easily taken advantage of, and I don't like seeing that, and that sort of thing. And then there's always the case of, your first couple of gigs, you're almost tempted to do it for free, because
mm,
you need that experience. Everywhere that's hiring for paid positions is saying, we want experience, and you feel that pressure. And I don't know if it's the same in the world of VO as well.
oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, and it also it doesn't just come from a lack of experience, in the field. I think it
Mhm.
also can come from a lack of um, life experience, not to be patronizing to people who are fresh out of college or university, but if you've not had that experience of knowing yourself in a workplace that you do good work, that reminder that you're doing what you're doing for a reason,
I know. Yeah.
you can feel, yeah, I guess that fear of never succeeding,
Yeah.
of needing that validation. That's what I was trying to get around to. Yes, the feeling of needing validation
Yeah.
can really play into it.
It's so
So,
hazy. Yeah.
yeah.
That sort of murkiness when you're starting out, it can really cloud your decision making, and I do think that after a couple of years you do get that clarity on the value of the work, because
Mm,
when you're studying, it's not quite the same to the structure and the 9 to 5 and the dedication, and what the way I always describe it is the marathon that is doing creative work professionally full
yeah,
time. And once you've done that for even 6 months, a year, you start thinking, oh, this is there's a reason there's a salary. And I always that's one of my it's one of
yeah,
my sort of things I say to people. Game development, and I'm sure voiceover is the same, is it's a dream job, and I love doing it. But the thing I always say at the end of that is, there's a reason there's a salary, because it
yeah,
is work, and it's
yeah.
hard work as well. It's draining, and you put yourself into it, and every day you're giving it 110%. And um,
Especially, I mean, not to downplay the work that more technological and like practical
yeah,
elements of games industry do, but I think creatives, like artists, whether that be sound designers, visual artists, voice actors, like you put and to get wafty, as I like to say, you
yeah,
put a bit of soul, you put a bit of your soul into
yeah.
everything you do, and it can be heartbreaking if it doesn't succeed or you don't get the praise
Hmm.
or you don't get the validation or you don't get the job. Um, yeah, it can be devastating. So
Hmm.
it's important to be able to step back and see things in a bit more perspective.
Completely. And it definitely comes with time, but it's something to be aware of in your career.
Yeah,
And I think your use of the word soul is for the really creative, for the really creatively driven people. That is exactly the word I would use. It is your soul. It's your passion. It's the love, your attention to detail. Everything you know and understand about the craft goes into it. So, 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 so important. We've touched on some really nice stuff there. I've learned a whole bunch of super cool things there. Um, but just to move on to our last section
Mm.
of the show. So Natalie, would you be comfortable talking a little bit about your mental health today on the show?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, amazing! It's always great to hear. So, what tactics do you have for when you're having a bad day? And I know this is probably even more compounded in the world of VO, or I imagine it is because um, you've got to sort of get up and put on a brave face and
Hmm.
deliver fantastic voiceover lines. And I would imagine doing that when maybe you're not having the best time must be a real challenge. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think so I will preface this with voiceover is I it's rare for voiceover to be a full-time job,
Yeah,
as in a 9 to 5, 7 days a week.
sure.
Um, it obviously because it's freelance, it's gig based, um, and in between you are, like I said before, you're hustling for more work.
Yeah,
So generally, for me, if I'm in the booth, if I'm on a stage, if I'm in front of a camera, that is a good day.
yeah,
You know, that's me getting to do the thing that I am passionate about.
yeah,
And even if there's other stuff going on, I'm it brings me joy to do this work,
yeah,
so it will help. Um, and I think that that can be quite hard when there is a dry period. I mean, the last year with the pandemic.
hmm,
Obviously, I'm very fortunate with having my own home studio, so I could still do voiceover work from home. But
yeah,
but I am an actor, a visual actor as well, and I had a job at as part of the visitor experience at the Globe, where I did at Shakespeare's Globe, where I did sword fighting performances for people, and I loved that so much. And
yeah,
I've not done that since last March,
hmm,
and it breaks my heart, you know?
yeah. I get you.
So, uh, so yeah, any time that I get to do the thing that I love, that is a good day. And in
Yeah,
terms of dealing with when I'm having a bad day, again, I am coming from a place of privilege. I'm pretty neurotypical. I have lots of love and support from the family and my husband that I live with, um and yeah, so for me, a bad day is never going to be as catastrophic as someone else's bad day who
mm,
may have other compound and complex issues going on.
hmm,
But I do find I have periods where I feel drifty as opposed
yeah,
to productive, where I find it ridiculously hard to focus when it's just a day of trawling or trying to write emails that 95% will not get response,
hmm,
60% may not get read at all. Like, it can be hard to keep going on. So I don't think I have any hard and fast, like, this is what I do and it will fix everything.
yeah. Of
But,
course, no, yeah,
but definitely taking a step away from screens completely,
hmm,
which is difficult when you work looking at a screen and
yeah,
all of the things you enjoy doing, like playing video games, involve looking at a screen
hmm,
as well.
yeah,
But yeah, definitely going for walks has really helped during the pandemic,
yeah,
especially like sticking on a podcast. I listen to a lot of like comedy podcasts,
hmm,
also like social issue podcasts, but also audio dramas, and having a nice variety of other thoughts from
hmm,
those, and baking as well, like doing
yeah.
something
Oh
practical.
yeah.
We moved house somehow. I'm still flabbergasted we managed it last year during the
Oh
pandemic.
my gosh, yeah.
And we now have a garden. So I've never owned a garden in my life. I've never been that interested in plants, but now it's I have lots of plant babies that I am responsible for. So
Yeah.
that's, another practical thing. Fresh air is has been good.
Hmm.
And
Oh yeah.
then during the pandemic especially, like, I've always been a nerd. I've always played video games.
Hmm.
I desperately wanted to get into role-playing games and D&D. for the longest time, but never
Mhm.
been around enough people who were interested or anyone who wanted to DM.
Mhm.
But in the last couple of years, I've found my people.
Yeah.
And I've managed to get into playing with a few different groups, and yeah, role playing games have been so wonderful, especially when I've been starved of theatre.
Oh my god,
Like
yeah, obviously, yeah.
that live experience of playing a character or even just watching other people play characters and being in the room with them. There's a spark, that you
Mhm.
don't get with film. Um, and you do sometimes with games because they're more interactive, but
Mhm.
oh, theatre is my drug. And role playing games
Mhm.
are yeah, they give me that buzz as well.
Mhm. Oh, there's some great stuff there. Totally getting away from screens is just, especially when so many of when your professional life is based around screens a lot
Yeah.
of the time, and then your primary hobby, which for many games industry people is playing games. It can get a bit hazy sometimes, and you said a really something that really struck a chord with me was you were saying about different thoughts as well and not thinking
Mhm.
about the same stuff. And that was a big lesson for me while I was a student and stuff, because it became when I went when I went to when I was doing not games education,
Mm.
I'd go to school and it would be all about maths or history or all this stuff, and then I'd go home and it'd be all video game, video game, video game.
Yeah.
But as I sort of transitioned into a games student and eventually into a games professional, my hobby became my job,
Yeah.
and it can become very overwhelming when I'm designing a level, and then at my lunchtime I'm watching games industry news, and then when I've got a downbeat I'm reading
Mhm.
industry articles, and um, sometimes I've just got to go to the gym and pick up some heavy things and
Yeah.
shout with my my gym buddy, and it's
Remember the wider
um
world and
exactly,
other
yeah.
things that are going on.
Totally, because I got I practically got booed for saying this at a student thing once, but I said there's more to life than video games, and video games are, and the games industry is my life's passion and my life's work,
Yeah.
but it can't be 100% of your time,
No.
because it becomes too much, and it becomes exhausting, and the last thing I want to see is anyone fall out of love with video games.
And I think that's worth remembering, especially given the statistics now. I have not
Mhm.
memorized them, but there's definitely I wish I had them to hand, but I didn't necessarily think this was going to come up. But
Yeah,
there's been polls and research into the drop off rate, right, of people moving out of video games, and it's like people don't stay in video games very long. There are not
right. Yeah,
that many
it's
people over 35, I think it
I
is,
know. Yeah,
staying in video games long enough to get to the
I
higher
know.
echelons.
It's
So
terrifying.
it's
Yeah.
important to, yeah, consider for longevity,
Mhm.
have other hobbies.
Yeah, I've read and seen a few times the stats on it. I think it's like a 5 year average
Yeah.
in the games industry, and in my granddad's era, it was people would spend their whole lives in their career. My granddad
Mm.
was an engineer for years and years and years, and um, yeah, it's nuts to think that so many people leave, and after just 5 years, that's when a lot of people sort of start hitting their stride in their professions, and to see a lot of people get burnt out and leave is to be honest, heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I don't have a better word for it. That's exactly how.
I've no idea
Um,
what the stats are for acting in
mm,
any of the various forms, but I imagine it's, to be honest, probably higher,
mm, oh
because
God,
there are thousands upon thousands of drama students graduate every
yeah,
year, and they are
yeah,
all, brilliant.
yeah.
And there's I do one statistic I do know is that only 2% of people who are actors make enough money off acting alone to survive.
Wow. Yeah. Do
2%.
you know what? It's a bit scary that you said 2%, because oh, I don't. I hate sharing the statistic, but I will anyway.
Mhm.
Um, it was there's like a 3% employment rate for, excuse me,
Mm.
There's only a 3% employment rate for some of the games courses out there, and um, that number is a bit shifted because it's that number is taken a year after course is complete. So
Yeah.
it's that is the worst that number will ever be. But 3% is for a degree, for a 3-year degree,
Yeah.
for is terrifying a little bit. And we don't like to get too dark on the podcast, too
Cheery
down and dreary. But
subjects.
I know. But these are important things to be aware of.
Yeah.
And I suggest having a look on gamesindustry.biz. They've got some really great articles around it, and have a look at the numbers and stats for yourself, because neither of us are perfect. So yeah, have a
Yeah.
look for yourselves at the stats. I'll probably put them in the description as well. But let's talk about your theatre stuff and your D&D stuff to round out the show, because
Sure.
I am also a hugely passionate role player
Yes.
when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons and that stuff. My group in particular is we are big into the role play side of things. We have our character voices.
Yeah.
We have our rich well, I say rich, we have our backstories all prepared and all that stuff. So I'd love to close the show with to talk a little bit more about how that theatre stuff, helps with your mental health, and just helps your outlook on life in general.
Yeah. I guess it comes down to catharsis.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, and it's something video games does very well as well. Like, people get their buzz off different things. That
Mhm.
sounds like it's going in a very strange path. What I'm trying to talk about is this idea
Yeah.
of big stories, right? Video games tell big stories, and that's what I'm here for,
Absolutely.
right? A lot of TV can tell small stories that are kind of very gritty day to day, and they're also important to tell. And there's also wonderful things to be gained out of them.
Mhm.
But I love a big melodramatic, like
Oh
space
yeah.
opera. I'm
Oh yeah.
so excited about Mass Effect Legendary Edition. It's going to take up a lot of my weekend. I
Oh
think,
yeah.
as we're recording this, it's the day it comes out. Um, yeah, so those big sweeping stories where you can have little moments of humanity and fun, and then go off and defeat the big bad, because I think that's
Mhm.
something that we kind of miss in day-to-day life, especially if
Yeah.
you're, doing the daily commute and working in an office, and you don't necessarily get that feeling of being an epic world-changing champion.
Mhm.
And yes, video games can fulfill that fantasy for a lot of people. I would argue that TTRPGs do it better, because
Mhm.
you have such a direct influence in it, and
Oh yeah.
your character can be your character. Like, you're not restricted to the archetypes or the stock
Mhm.
basic characters that the game devs have come up with,
Yeah.
as varied and wonderful as they are, and are only getting better. Um, yeah, and it comes down to that catharsis of, I have agency in this world, and I can do
Oh yeah.
wonderful things and have fun with friends.
I know. That is, you've just captured so much about what I love about tabletop games. And the thing I would recommend, if you're someone who loves PC RPGs or CRPGs, your computer RPGs and that sort of thing, um, you should absolutely give tabletop a try. And
Yeah,
I big recommendation there. Because
and
it's just a great way to expand your roster of
mm,
experiences, and it's got such a unique flavor.
yeah. And I will say as well, D&D is not the be all and end all. It is amazing.
That's true.
It's the pioneer. It does it really, really well, especially 5th edition.
Yeah.
But there are so many other fantastic tabletop role playing games out there as well, and
Mhm.
some that are much easier to pick up. So if you are thinking like, oh, I maybe might be interested, but the D&D manual is so big and there are so many numbers,
Yeah.
there are so many other simpler TTRPGs that you can just like dive in for a couple of hours and then leave it.
Hmm. Yeah. No. That is just a brilliant takeaway as well, because I've been sitting on the Cyberpunk rule book for literally like almost 2 years now,
Mhm.
like trying to dedicate my time to, because when you're DMing, you've got to know the
Yeah,
whole system, and you've got to know the world pretty well as well. Otherwise, you can't. Otherwise, you just won't be able to run your session for your players, because they won't have time to read the whole manual as well.
yeah.
But there's loads of cool stuff out there. I'm trying to remember some off the top of my head. Uh, maybe you could give some recommendations, Natalie.
Okay, so Lady Blackbird is the only game that I've DM'd. But and it's just like Star Wars meets Firefly, and it's
Oh,
steampunk, and it can be a one shot,
yeah.
but me and the group I DM'd for, we made it last 11 sessions into this massive sweeping story of like taking on an empire and discovering magical
Mhm.
abilities within yourselves. I think Lady Blackbird is fantastic. Um, on a simpler scale, and I wish I could remember his name. Maybe I can search for him on Twitter super quick. The honey heist is, you are bears that are trying to steal honey from a honey convention, and you have two stats,
Yeah.
and it's super simple and very silly. Oh no, you're gonna have to put it in the show notes because I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
Yeah, we will pop it in the
The
show notes.
guy
That's no problem.
Yeah, the guy that made it does loads of TTRPGs that are like super easy to just bounce straight into. Um, what else? Okay, so I play with a group called Merely Role Players. We do a podcast that is us telling stories
Yeah.
in various role playing game worlds. We mostly use Powered by the Apocalypse engine games,
Yeah.
um, or Simple Worlds. I can never remember which way around it is. It's Simple Worlds is the engine, and then Powered by the Apocalypse is the anyway. They're simple.
Yeah.
Um, you can if you have a look at the Merely Role Players podcast, Matt, who DMs most of it, explains everything and does links to everything. Like we're at the moment we have like two projects on go. We have like our main house show, which is a big sweeping saga that's playing the Monster of the Week game, which is a Powered by the Apocalypse style game.
Yeah.
Um, and it's kind of that monster of the week trope. It's like Buffy
Mm.
or Supernatural kind of vibe, but we've set it in like a quaint English market town. So there's lots of British quirks to it,
Yeah.
and we bring lots of folklore and nonsense into it. So that's like the ongoing main house show. We call it
Yeah.
Vigil, and then we also have like in between acts of Vigil, we just play like studio shows. So it's
Yeah.
using like theatre terminology, and they could be a variety of different games that are just shorter, like one shot things.
Mhm.
So we play loads of shorter games that are simpler to dive into on that
Yeah.
podcast if people are interested.
Oh, that's just amazing. I one of the reasons that we do this podcast is to get some, really varied perspectives from all over the industry, and I feel so much more enriched and clued into the world of voiceover and into the world of tabletop RPGs as
Oh,
well.
cool.
So yeah, thanks a million for coming on the show. Would you like
Yeah,
to,
no worries.
plug your Twitter or anything that you've got coming up that you'd like to mention?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Winter Natters. So winter like the season, Natters is Natters. In terms of stuff I've got coming up, I have a couple of theatre projects coming up over the summer, but I think by the time this goes out, they won't have announce them just yet, but if
Mhm.
you keep an eye on my socials, I will talk about them. I guess the big thing that definitely will have been announced by the time this released is that the other group that I do role playing games with, Roll Together, we play D&D, we stream it on Twitch on Monday and Tuesday nights. Um, they've done a collaboration with the mobile game Warriors of Waterdeep. So we're doing
Yeah.
an 8-part actual play campaign using their original characters from the
Oh
mobile
my
game
gosh. Yeah.
and playing the first chunk of the game as those characters.
Oh my word.
Yeah, so that's very exciting,
That's
and that's going to be
amazing.
starting at the end of May. So depending on wibbly wobbly timey wimey things, it
Mhm.
might be out by
It
now.
might be out. Well, if it is out, you will definitely see me in the chat and watching as soon as possible, and it will be in the as soon as it does go live, it will be in the show notes.
Great.
Can't wait to see that. That sounds so exciting.
It is. It's
Uh,
so much fun.
That's great. So yes, this has been the Game Dev Garden, a podcast all about deep conversations, game development, curiosities, mental health, and wherever the dialogue might take us. Thanks so much for joining me here today, guys. Goodbye.